Dear panelists, dear guests, thank you very much for joining today, and also on behalf of Institut für Europäische Politik, I would like to warmly welcome you to today's online lunch debate, which is actually organized by IIP in cooperation with the European Investment Bank as part of the IIP event series. So we have a series of different debates, both in virtual as well as in on-site formats. My name is Dr. Funda Tiking, and I'm one of the two directors at IIP, and I have the pleasure of moderating the event today. Our lunch debates aim at analyzing current European policy issues with experts from politics and academia. And I think, today we have actually a very timely issue, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to discuss the challenges of the reconstruction and recovery of Ukraine with three experts today. So therefore, I would like to welcome again very warmly Jean-Éric Desagon, Gerlinde Heckmann, and Natalia Shapoval on our virtual panel. Jean-Éric Desagon is since 2018 head of the European Investment Bank resident representation in Ukraine. Insights into the German perspective on Ukrainian reconstruction are brought to us by Gerlinde Heckmann, head of the subdivision Foreign Trade Promotion and Financing in the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. And last but not least, I welcome Natalia Shapoval, who is Vice President for Policy Research and Chairman of the Kiev School of Economics Institute, with whom we have actually the pleasure of cooperating in various projects together. The topic, as I said, of today's lunch talk is highly topical because we framed it as investing in Ukraine's recovery, the next step after the International Experts Conference in Berlin, which actually took place yesterday. So let me share some introductory thoughts with you before we then can go into the discussion and into the inputs of the panelists right away. So the ongoing full-scale Russian war of aggression against Ukraine has severely damaged the whole country. It's not only the bombing and shelling of cities and people, but it's also the critical infrastructure that has been destroyed, and millions of people are displaced. So a recent report by the World Bank, the European Commission, and the Ukrainian government estimates that by June 2020, the war had already caused damage amounting to over 97 billion US dollars, and reconstruction and recovery needs are expected at almost 350 billion US dollars. This all implies that, the slogan "Standing with Ukraine," which came up right immediately after the 24th of February, does not only require immediate solidarity in terms of migration or, economic and military support to Ukraine for fighting the Russian aggressor, but also already requires us now to look actually ahead and supporting Ukraine in a midterm to long-term perspective, actually by supporting Ukraine's recovery. Olaf Scholz and Ursula von der Leyen, in a joint article in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, highlighted the need to support Ukraine's recovery if we wanted to assure the establishment of rule of law, a vibrant democracy, and a stable economy. And this the earlier the better. So they called for a Marshall Plan for Ukraine. And a major step for the reconstruction of Ukraine was taken in July, also at the Lugano Conference, where the Ukrainian government presented its national recovery plan. And following this conference, the conference yesterday here in Berlin was then also hosted by Germany within the framework of the G7, and then also together with the European Commission. Experts from international organizations, think tanks, civil society, and the private sector discussed the priorities for the recovery, the reconstruction and modernization of Ukraine, and the modalities for its financing. And I'm very glad that we can actually continue these discussions today in our framework here, and then also benefit from the very lively insights and takeaways that our panelists actually took away from the debates yesterday. So the initial framework for structuring the recovery of Ukraine has thus been established, or at least conceptualized, And this is what we would like to discuss also with our panelists and the audience. So crucial questions in terms of, broader terms, so to speak, is actually the timing of the recovery and also the support to recovery. It's also the structures, how to structure it. It's also the question of leadership, who should take the lead of all of the entire procedure. It's also then the amount of, well, assessing the amount that is actually needed for the reconstruction and the recovery. And also the issue, of course, where the money should come from. And another thought I think that is also very important is how to make all of this sustainable, realizing that, of course, the war is still ongoing and we actually might be facing a longer period. But before starting, I'd like to give a few remarks on the procedure of this event. So our three experts will begin with short introductory statements. And after that, I'm actually gonna try to open up to questions from the floor as fast as possible in order to have a very interactive discussion with all of you. So if you want to ask questions, you can either use the Zoom function for raising your virtual hand or writing your demand to speak in the chat. You can also write your question in the chat, and then I'm going to try to actually include that into the moderation, but I always prefer the oral intervention in order to have a lively debate. Please note, you saw the message in the beginning that we will record the sessions with a focus on the panelists, actually, as this is supposed to be a public event. So as I said, and without any further ado, I'm going to hand over now to our panelists who have all closely followed yesterday's conferences, some of them even being present during the conference. And so my natural question to all of them is, what are your, to share with us your insights and main takeaways from this conference? So how can we assess the results of the conference? But I would also like to expand the discussion by reflecting on Ukraine's national recovery plan. What are our experts' opinions on expectations for this? And how has the international community, and in particular Germany and the EU, reacted to the recovery plan? And what are your main, well, basically also what are your main takeaways? And maybe also the to-do list if you look into the future and think about yesterday's discussion. So without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. de Zagon. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fred. When we look at the invasion of Ukraine, I think we have to think about three dimensions. The first one is the military one. I'm not a military expert, but I mean, everything I read and I understand is that Ukrainians are doing extremely well on that one. And that one, I think, can be seen as very, very positive. The second one, obviously, is the human suffering. It's very clear now that the Russians are clearly targeting civilian infrastructure and civilians. I mean, the bombing of cities like they're doing can just do one thing, is to kill civilians and destroy civilian infrastructure. I think that there's a lot that has been done. I think there's many humanitarian actions. I think the welcoming of the refugees in the EU and in Europe in general has been very, very strong. So I think that there's a lot that we are trying to do to help on the humanitarian side. And obviously, we come to that, the infrastructure is key. And that comes to the third dimension, which is the financial. The financial one, there are some very, very strong results from the conference yesterday. I think before I talk about finance, about the conference yesterday, for me, there are a few things that were extremely important, even before talking about the money, is that I think that it's absolutely clear that this war is about values. It is about an autocratic state against liberal democracies. And I think everybody who intervened in the conference yesterday, we are all aware that we are trying to defend liberal democracies against autocracies. And that is it. And I think nobody hesitates anymore on that, especially after last shelling, after last bombing of civilian. There's no doubt anymore, if there were any. So that is something I think was commonly shared yesterday in Berlin. The second thing is, And I think that was a key message. It came very clearly from President von der Leyen. It came also very clearly from all the presidents of the IFI present. It is that we have to do it now. It's not that we can wait and say what's going to happen. How is this war going to happen? How long will it stand? Is we have to help them now. And I think that was a very, very clear message from all the president I just mentioned. Now, then we come to the financial part, which is obviously is key. There was one extremely reassuring message yesterday, and it was support for the budget. The Ukrainians, and that also figures given by IMF, the figures are that Ukraine needs for the budget simply to pay pensions, salaries to teachers, to nurses and so on. Ukraine needs something like 3 billion per month. It can be increased to 4 or 5, but that depends a bit on what kind of energy supply they have to do, buying gas and etc. But roughly it is about 3 billion. Now, the very positive message coming from President von der Leyen was that the Commission will provide 1.5 billion per month. The idea is obviously that EU provides half of the need, and probably the US will provide the other one. So, and that is an extremely strong message, because that means that because, I mean, when you speak to the Ukrainians, they have been struggling with that. I mean, when you speak to Minister of Finance, Mr. Mashenko, that was a major problem. If that one is sorted out now, if the EU and the US can agree that we will help them for the budget, that is a very strong message. Now, was also one thing President von der Leyen said, that it will take the time it takes, but we will support them. We are not going to give up, because this is about values. So that is a very strong message that on the budget side, probably they should be in good shape. Now, then we come to the other dimension, is that we have to reconstruct Ukraine. Russians have been destroying massively infrastructure. We expect, we have calculated the same thing, I think, with World Bank, that is about 30–40% of the energy infrastructure has been destroyed, especially after this last week. We have to help them. We have to do something about it. Now, there is a figure of about 18 billion. 18 billion have to be provided urgently for energy, for shelter, to pass the winter. And we have to find a way, really, how we can find this 18 billion very quickly. So far, EIB has provided, and disbursed this year, about 2 billion to support Ukraine, and we hope to do 500 million more. Now, but we still need to go for this 18 billion. And this is really key things, so people get shelter for the winter, and then they get also some heating, some water, and so on. We have to understand how that can be done. It is an important amount. I just want to remember to everybody that EIB used to lend about 1 billion to Ukraine per year. The other IFIs did the same. EBRD was 1 billion. World Bank was about 1 billion. So we are coming from something like 3 billion together to suddenly 18 billion very urgently. It's a massive amount of money. Therefore, we had this presentation by the Ukrainians, and I think welcomed by the Commission and by you, of this platform. Now, President von der Leyen, on top of saying that EU will provide this 18 billion per year, also say that the EU, the Commission, could be running the secretariat for this kind of platform, which is a very good news, because we need to have the EU heavily involved in that. Now, we need to have some way of coordinating how, I mean, the needs are there. I think we know roughly, and I think EIB has been very much involved in that. We know roughly which kind of infrastructure, how we have to do it. But we need to get the money from somewhere. And EIB has committed, I mean, has disbursed with the support of the Commission this 2 billion. We hope to do 500 million more, and we hope to do more than that. We are used to work with the guarantee of the Commission when we do things outside of the EU. We're discussing internally of committing 1 billion on the own risk of the bank, which is an exception, but we really are ready to do that. it's under discussion, but still, we are far away from 18 billion. So we really, really need all the donors, all the member states and all the countries supporting Ukraine really, really to find a way to channel this 18 billion. And then on the very positive side, I mean, I discussed also yesterday in Berlin with my colleagues from EBRD World Bank. I think we are absolutely ready to cooperate to do everything to do. Because also the one thing is important is that we need to find a way also to implement this project, which is not always very easy, and it's a large amount. But I think all the IFIs will work together to implement this and to support the fact that we can really, really restore all necessary infrastructure and needed shelter housing for the winter. So, and I must say that we have been doing a lot of progress. The cooperation is strong. The IFI speaks with the EU together. We speak on a strategic level at least once a month. On a more operational level, I had conversations with my colleagues from the IFIs every week in Ukraine. And so we have been doing a lot. We have come to in defining what is needed. We agree on the fact that we need to have a platform. The EU has proposed to have a secretariat. Now we need the last step, and that is urgent. We need to find a way to unblock or to unblock or deblock this money that is really, really urgently. And then I think the EIB certainly, and certainly in cooperation with the IFIs, we can implement that. I will stop here, and I'm absolutely very happy to take all the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. de Zagon, for also outlining the amount of money needed, and then also the urgency that it actually has to be unblocked, and also already highlighting the different structural questions that are related to that. And I think this brings me right, or takes me right to Gillian Heckman, who might actually then share a bit of her takeaways, but maybe also a German perspective on the entire issue. I mean, also Olaf Scholz having, clearly asked for the Marshall Plan for the 21st century. So what is your take on this entire situation and the way forward?
Thank you very much for organizing this event and for having me. We had, frankly speaking, very intensive 3 days. We started on Sunday and had a whole row of events here in Berlin, bilateral ones, talks between our minister with the Ukrainian side, a big economic workshop or conference on Monday organized by both sides, Ukraine and Germany, and yesterday the G7 conference. What was really impressive for me was how good the Ukrainians were organized. They know what they want. We asked them what they need, and they really gave us a whole row of lists what is needed right now. So we had very concrete talks, and we had yesterday a more discussion on the structure, on how we can combine all the helps that is wanted to give. And the clear message was already mentioned that the G7, that our government, all the governments are ready to start now to support Ukraine. And as it was mentioned, there is really a need to start now. We have to support Ukraine to survive the winter. That's a big topic to solve. And for Germany, from the German perspective, I can say that we already started. We gave them already a big humanitarian support, and we are doing it ongoing. We rebuild energy grids. We build housing and buildings. We try to fix the heating again. There are medicine on trains to Ukraine. So we're trying to do what we can even right now. And of course, there is a will to do that as long as we have to do it. On Monday, that's perhaps another insight from the last days. On Monday, we held our bilateral so-called high-level group between Germany and Ukraine. And that was a chance for our side to get the real list, what is needed by the Ukraine and by the Ukrainian side. And that was more to a very concrete order. the energy grids, the broken houses and buildings, the agricultural topics, the medical topics. So it's a broad picture. The situation of the refugees in Germany. They see the brain drain in Ukraine, and this is a big issue. They want to get as many people back as they can. So I think these things show that we really need to start now to help and to support and to assist, even during the war times, the cruel situation. From Berlin, we are doing it in a very integrative way with Brussels. So we have a coordination within our government, but at the same time, we are talking as much as we can with our Brussels colleagues to coordinate. Yes, for the federal government, we have almost a weekly session to bring our support mosaic stones together, to bring it to a bigger picture. But the most important thing right now before the winter is the humanitarian aid or support, and to refix and build the housing, buildings, heating systems, and the energy grids. So that's from my side a short insight over the last 3 days. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for Mrs. Hackman, and also for pointing out something that has not yet been mentioned, but the issue of migration, but then also the brain drain issue, because this is really something in order how to support those people being here, in order then also to facilitate them also going back once the situation allows it. And I think this is something that also we at IEP have our thoughts about. Yes, I would like to complete the brief round of interventions by Natalia Shapoval, who is at the Kiev School of Economics Institute, and who has actually also started a database, if I'm well informed, on actually monitoring and self-reporting also the needs and the damage to Ukraine's physical infrastructure. So if you could also kind of, share then your really, on-site experience with that, and maybe also your assessment then on the results yesterday of the conference and the future ways ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for having this timely event and inviting me. Indeed, at KC, since the third day of war, we've been monitoring the damages caused by Russian aggression to the infrastructure, to the environment, and the data and the methods that we use there also, we contributed to the reports of the government and to the World Bank reports. Our recent figure for September suggests that there are $127 billion of the overall damages. It's like more updated figure from what was announced on some events in the conference based on World Bank report, which was for June. And it's still not the most recent, because as we correctly discussed today, that the October shelling into the energy infrastructure are really huge. So yeah, these numbers are really, we have more than 138,000 of houses that are being destroyed. And basically we do it for two reasons. One is to inform that kind of decisions on recovery, fast recovery, as we discussed now, but the primary motivation is, of course, to make Russia pay for everything they did. We also make different contributions with our analytics to recovery plans that, like in Lugano, what was presented, and in different work of the government. So I will share my what I find important progress from Lugano. First, I think it's like EU membership. So everyone was the chancellor, the president, von der Leyen. They were talking about it's not that not starting from 1, 2, 3 condition and maybe Ukraine in the future. No, it was like Ukraine is a part of the European future. And I think this is a tremendous progress, and it's a big signal on like in what kind of directions Ukraine gonna be motivated to move. Second, I think it's a really big deal is this $18 billion that President Ursula mentioned, because in Lugano it was, you know, a big contrast between this all tremendous economic losses that our Prime Minister mentioned, the 750 billion. So this was something including these direct damages, all kind of budgetary losses. And it was a huge contrast that at the end of the conference, there was no like really big commitment. And this commitment is a big deal, not because of the number, but also because like it will be 1.5 billion a month. And it's huge because this predictability is critical for monetary situation in Ukraine. When money don't come like on time, then central bank should print money. And that's, you know, spirals everything that economists don't like. And I think another important thing about it, and it's connected to a third important point about this coordination of donors, is that it was like this 1.5 billion per month is something around half of this budgetary needs of Ukraine. So I think there is more clear positioning of the EU and its role in the recovery process. And I think it's a very constructive step because again, in Lugano, it was like everyone announced a separate platform for coordinated support of Ukraine, and it was a little bit awkward. And now it's really, I think it's more or less resolved and there is much more consensus. And the President von der Leyen, she said words like, we can be a secretariat. So I think it really opens up for a really inclusive way forward and it motivates everyone to contribute instead of really compete who like leads or something. And yeah, a small, I think, thing, but then our Minister of Finance, this time he was on this meeting, and I think it's also a big deal for the very like concrete steps afterwards. And yeah, then the President of Ukraine announced this recovery fund setup. I think this is also very new as compared to previous like discussions. I don't know how it's going to end up and what he really like meant. We have done discussions about it in Ukraine internally, but I think what's important reading of that is that the President and the government and then the partners, everyone is ready to set up, you know, a dedicated person or a group of people who will do something every day, not just when a big conference comes, etc. But all these strategic open questions, they will be discussed on the daily basis. I think it's also important. And I really appreciate this, you know, the mood of the overall event. It was like investing in recovery is investing in the future European country. And it was, of course, totally, you know, it's like everyone can be a part of the success. Not something, you know, that no one wants to be part of. So I think these results are very good, especially when we compare it like what is the progress, and it were much more specific than last time. And I don't know all the nuances from the personal meetings, but it seems that there are much more specifics on this urgent support, winter support, all these humanitarian needs. So I think it's very good and it's going to get even better like with time. Thanks, over.
Thank you very much also for giving us your insights also with regards to, well, again, the numbers, where we stand and also the entire progress. As Simona already wrote in the chat, now it's basically also, you know, everybody's opportunity to ask a couple of questions that have come to, well, that maybe you have already brought to this event, but that might have also come to your mind while listening to the to the interventions. I don't see any hands at the moment right now. So maybe in order to give you a bit more time for thinking and thinking about the question you would want to ask, I would like to actually open our question. Okay, now I see one question. I'm still going to ask my question and then take the other one so that we can collect. Because we, I mean, what has become very clear now is the urgency and that we need to react fast. And we heard about the figures that we need to find and then kind of provide to Ukraine in order to actually now, with a view to the winter time and the immediate need. I would like also to go a bit further in terms of the midterm perspective and also the national recovery plan of the Ukraine, and something that Natalia was also mentioning with regards to the aim and the strategic imperative of EU membership. This is also what you clearly stated. So my question would also be in how far, I mean, how can the recovery program be also be structured in order to maybe even link that to the EU's accession, and also Mr. de Zagon said right in the beginning, it's the issue of it's about values, it's about autocracies against liberal democracies. So how can we actually structure the support in order to really ensure that that this is enabled and achieved within midterm and long-term goals. So this would be my question, but I now really see already 3 interventions. So I would suggest we collect. So I'm gonna give Greta Sver the floor, and then Julian Romanush, Romanushin, yeah, I see your full name. And then I'm going to give it back to the panelists, and afterwards it's then Eve's turn to open the second round of questions, because that was the order of the question. So Greta, if you could also turn on your camera when asking the question, exactly. So, and if you could also introduce yourself when asking the question.
Yes, I'm Greta. I'm currently doing a master's and I'm researching a bit about this reconstruction and recovery process. And I have a question of understanding from yesterday's conference, and maybe you can help me out. So if I understood correctly from the Ukrainian actors, they mentioned this Rammstein model for financing. And I'm not sure how is this like an alternative to the EU platform or something from the Ukrainian side. So I was not really sure how this works. Maybe you can help me there. And then the second question would be to Mrs. Heckmann. How would you say, can you ensure, or yeah, how is like from the German side, how to ensure political coherence? Because sometimes you hear from the Chancellor's office, then the BMZ or like the Ministry of Economy. So I'm wondering, yeah, what's the stand there? Who's responsible for what? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then Julian, it's the floor is yours for your question. If you could also introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julian Romaneshin. I'm the fellow of the Academy of International Affairs of North Rhine-Westphalia. Together with a colleague from German Institute for Development and Sustainability, we just published a paper on exactly this topic, how EU can support a recovery of Ukraine. And I'm going to share the link to the paper in a moment. My questions are with regard to sources of financing, because over the summer we've seen the difficulties and quarrels among the member states in terms of how to raise the 9 billion that the member states committed to Ukraine, or the macro-financial funding in May. Then the first 1 billion was released relatively quickly, but then the next 5 have been delayed for a very long time. And at the core of the issue was, well, how to what would be the sources of financing in terms of loans or grants, and if these are loans, who our member states are ready to back them up. So my question is how this question, to what extent this question was resolved when it comes to the 18 billions that were committed actually last week as a result of the European Council Summit in Brussels. And the second question would be also with regard to the frozen Russian assets. We know that there has been considerable amount of frozen sovereign Russian assets as well as private Russian assets in the EU, but even more in the US. To what extent this issue was tackled during the conference yesterday, and what is the progress on that? And finally, perhaps also to Natalia, the question with regard to the National Recovery Plan. Where is it right now? What is the progress with regard to it, and to what extent it is still relevant? Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, lots of questions actually. So I really stop here and then really open the next round with Eve's intervention and question. So we have the entire values and membership linkage, the midterm perspective, then the Rammstein model for financing, and then an explicit question to Germany in terms of political coherence, funding resources, loans or grants, and also the question of the Russian assets. And the final question then to Natalia also. So I think I'm going to open the floor again with Mr. de Zagon for his reactions, and then Gerlind, and then Natalia.
Thank you. The first one, recovery and EU accession. I think there are a few things. First one is that there are some absolutely immediate need, and that I think we have to do things as quickly as possible. We have to respect, obviously, some rule of the bank on procurement and things like that. We have to be sure that things are transparent. Now, but that's the first stage. Then we will come into a stage where we talk more about something like 100 billion for reconstructing Ukraine and make a new country. And I think when we talk about really reconstructing Ukraine, we talk about this 100 billion first, and then maybe longer term 350 billion mentioned by the Commission and by the World Bank. Obviously, everything we will do there will be in line with the EU accession. So we want to have a greener economy. We want respect for environment and things. So the way we're going to reconstruct Ukraine has probably to be on the ground that will become a EU member. And again, this has been clearly specified also in Berlin that Ukraine will become a EU member. But that means also they have still to do a lot of progress in terms of transparency, rule of law, and things like that. And it's more important, even an additional point is that we cannot find 100 billion, 350 billion only for member states. There will be need for private sector to invest in Ukraine. And they will only do that when they feel that there's a rule of law in Ukraine. So this has to be done together. And I think that is very clearly understood by the president and by the prime minister and the whole government. So this has to go all together. Concerning the platform, yes, there have been different announcements about the platform, which one and so on. Now, I think that what everybody agree on is the need to be a coordination and the need to be a strong ownership of the Ukrainian government. And that is very, very clear. I think everybody understands that. So there should be a kind of platform. I think the Ukrainians need to have a strong ownership of this platform. And then the EU proposed to run the secretariat of that. Now, we still probably have to discuss that a bit further on how we put that together and what's going to be the respective role. I think that the platform has to be there to centralize the needs of Ukraine and then try to find a way to finance it and streamline that. And that is the need of the platform. The exact format of it, we still probably have to look into. Yes, it was difficult to disburse this 9 billion, and it's true. Now, but we have made progress because this commitment to disburse 18 billion to Ukraine over 1 year from the EU, it is that progress. Now we hope that that problem is sorted out. And I mean, we have been asking since some months how we can get some support from donors from EU and so on investing for infrastructure. And it has been difficult because all the minds have been on how can we support the budget deficit. Now, if this one is sorted out, I think it's going to be easier to get money for infrastructure recovery, reconstruction, and so on. So I think we have had a very, very positive step with this announcement of President von der Leyen. And that leads me to the last one, frozen assets. I mean, President von der Leyen specifically mentioned that during the conference yesterday. And we all have the feeling that we should take these assets and give them to Ukraine. Now, the difference between an autocratic state and a liberal democracy is we have to respect the rules of law. So yes, these assets have been frozen, but President von der Leyen also said very clearly that we need to find legal methods to say so now and to take these assets. But we have to respect the rule of law. We cannot just say it's unfair what Russians are doing. We take the asset and that is it, and we give to Ukraine. We cannot do that. That is what not liberal democracy do. So we have to respect the rule of law. Yes, it's difficult. It may be going to take some time, but we all hope sincerely that will happen. But we have to respect the rule of law. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Gerlind. There was one question directly directed at you, and then I'm sure you also have your thoughts on the other question.
Yes, thank you for the integration in the European Union. I think this is a steady process as well, and we already talked a lot to the Ukrainian side because our German enterprises, they are interested in investing, in trading, even during the war times. But of course, the business climate and the regulation framework is a crucial point. And so we are discussing with the Ukrainian side whether we can assist them through our programs for administrative support, for being anti-corruption measures. That's a question. Rule of law is a question. It was already mentioned. So we are trying to start there even right now. The question for political coherence in Germany, as I mentioned, we have weekly or every second week, we have coordinating rounds where every ministry is telling what they are doing. And we are even trying to combine our programs better than in the past. So Ukraine may be a kind of business model or a pilot project really to get a better coherence from all the state-financed programs. This is not easy, but we try our best to improve ourselves. From the perspective of finance, I just would like to add that our export promotion and financing, our guarantee systems are open for Ukraine. And maybe it is a surprise, but we have enterprises that are using our grant and investment guarantees programs, even in these times. Yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
Oops, thank you. And Natalia, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So on the first question of the integration with EU, so I already observed that in the government there is really a very rapid process of transposing the legislation of the EU into the Ukrainian laws. So all this legal homework is being done, and a lot of attention is being put into that. Of course, there are a lot of other aspects with the trade, with how customs work, etc., at the operational level. And to some degree, there are projects that are trying to address it already now. But yeah, I think much more on that will be done later on. And here, I think the most important, this strategic role of the candidacy and membership is that there is no doubt where Ukraine is going. So when everyone is talking about the vision, what I want to do, so that's what we want to do. And I think it gives everyone who is in this process with Ukraine, like much more clarity of how the end result might look like and what are some of the measures of this end result. On the next question was on this Rammstein, how it's different from the. So it's a good question. How I understand is that yeah, there is a question of how funds can be collected, how the distribution of funds can be governed, and this is like about the governance. But then there is a question how we meet, how it's operationalized. And maybe I think when it's being talked about Rammstein, it's more about this frequency of meeting and this kind of analogy, but not something like entirely new being brought to the table. But yeah, that's my understanding. And on sources of financing, yeah, you know, like, so I have economic background, so I look at the G7 countries GDP, and this like 33 billions would be less than 0.1%. So it seems that in principle, it's somehow possible to get these funds mobilized. And then I agree with previous speakers that this 18 billion is specifically that there is already some ways, you know, how the bureaucracies and budgetary processes in the countries can work. On the National Recovery Plan, so I think the actual next step with the recovery plan is setting some kind of this regular meetings about recovery, whether we call it Rammstein or some platform or something, but that's kind of next step. Otherwise, yeah, you can have one document, you can rewrite it 10 times, you can, you know, you have this 100, these projects, you can rewrite them again, but there is no sense if there is no live process, how people interact about that. So I think, so that the document is the same. I never seen that it was kind of rewritten or something, or it's not actual, but yeah, next steps are in this, like making these projects implemented. Thanks.
Thank you. Now I'm looking at the time. We still have time for a second round of questions, I would say. So Eve, I think, is no longer with us, but Stefan Kegebein is now has raised his hand, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the word. I posted in the chat a paper that we developed together with our member companies. I'm from the German Eastern Business Association. Since everybody just thinking about what they can do and contribute and drafting ideas, maybe Natalia, when it comes to the damage assessment, maybe we can just look for an exchange, how these companies maybe could be helpful or supportive, or I don't know, to get them involved in a certain discussion you have. So we got companies from 6 sectors. Construction is one of them, energy, so important things, I guess. So just an offer, if you don't mind. I just want to make two comments. The one is on reconstruction. Maybe the one is this one on urgent needs. So there is a lot of things are going on energy, for example, and companies are ready to help there, to donate. There are processes in place, and that works good. It could be quicker and more, but that works. But when it comes to a midterm recovery and investments, Mr. Desagon, your president yesterday told the people even EIB needs bankable projects. And that is what our companies tells us as well. So they are ready to donate for a certain period of time. But at a certain point, a company is a company and a bank is a bank. And there must be some business models behind it. So for the bank, to make it bankable as a project, and the company, in the end, it must be a project where they can earn together with, for example, Ukrainian partners, at least in a midterm perspective, money, and have a, let's say, environment of guarantees of some physical, let's say, good situation or good shape. So this is, I guess, a distinction between urgent help and support and a more, let's say, complex approach when it really comes to investments or bringing companies to Ukraine again. Our experience is that companies who are in Ukraine, they stay in Ukraine. Some of them still invest in updating the projects. But for the moment, at the time being, it would be very hard to attract some foreign new money to Ukraine. But this is, I guess, really the bottleneck what Ukrainians need right now. But just to really pointing out and make this question clear, the big question we have to solve is how one can bring new money to Ukraine. This is, I just want to add. Otherwise, Ms. Heckmann and others, we are in contact. But just to really work on this issue, how to bring new money to Ukraine, I guess this is really critical, and no one has really the final answer on that. But just to comment on this, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional question from the audience? I'm looking around. I see that, yeah, then Mr. Desagon, you can, I'm sure that you want to react to the bankable project, so please go ahead.
Yes, no, thank you. I think that was a very important remark, that it's very difficult for a bank to do financing that are not really bankable. And we see that. I had a discussion with the Deputy Minister of Energy last week, and he explained to me that the people, I mean, from this company, they go out there to repair. They take what they can find as cable, as whatever, transform whatever, and they just do it. And that is an issue for a bank, because as much as we have respect for what to do and they do exactly what is needed, it's very difficult to finance that. So, for example, we're just saying that you have any kind of invoices for the material you use, that's something we can probably finance. But I would like to come back to what you said, because we looked into the recovery plan. We looked into the World Bank's assessment, and we were looking where EIB could have a strong added value. And what we want to do is what we call the bottleneck the economy. So we want to focus very much on kind of infrastructure that will favor the economy, and the economy that is very much private companies will come. So we are looking into what we can do, for example, to support the transfer line, I mean, the passage of the customs, what kind of road are very central, what kind of energy is very central for the industry. So we are really looking into that. And I think if the industry and if the business community has clear opinions on what need to be, where do we need to invest in infrastructure in Ukraine to favor development of companies in Ukraine, please communicate that. I mean, we have an office in Berlin. So if you have ideas about that, that is very welcome, because that is really something we want to focus on. That it is very important to finance a road in some remote part of Ukraine, because that really people feel very differently. They feel that are connected to the country. But maybe it's a priority, unfortunately, today to finance something that will favor the business community to develop. One thing linked to that is obviously Ukraine need to export to generate hard currency. I mean, the reserves of the banks, of the National Bank of Ukraine are okay, but it's challenging. So we need to find ways that we can really support export of Ukraine. Therefore, we need to focus on financing really the key infrastructure for export and for the industry. So if you have ideas, please, I see that my colleague Heike is here from our office in Berlin. If you have idea, do not hesitate to communicate that to us, because that is really precious for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other additional question? Heike, was that just a wave, or did you want to respond anything to that, or just? Yeah, maybe you were just saying hello.
I would just support what my colleague Jean-Éric Desagon said. So don't hesitate also to contact the Berlin office. We are here to receive your ideas, to discuss it, and then to probably bring these ideas forward to the right people in Luxembourg or in Kiev or wherever. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalia.
Yes, thank you, Stefan, for this important question. And I don't have super comprehensive answer. Indeed, you raise like where there's a lot of questions, not answers, but I think this energy theme is not something where Ukraine just needs like X billions and everything is solved. The amount of time to really cold period is really weeks. And like every week, Russians are damaging more and more infrastructure. So what Ukrainians need are very frequently solutions and ideas and technologies that we couldn't come up ourselves. And both in the centralized, like governmental level, how something can be, like how power plants can be kept working if, you know, there is a heat, or some like small turbines near the houses, but also at the individual decentralized level. And I think it's more or less, yeah, my prediction is that the energy system gonna be more decentralized, because right now our huge electricity grids, it's unlikely that this size can maintain through the war. So I think a lot of technologies and ideas Ukrainians would be buying and would be asking partners to help buying if there would be something meaningful. Because a lot of this, you know, we cannot buy thousands of generators for the whole infrastructure in case it's destroyed. It's just, you cannot deliver it even. We right now have bottlenecks. So if there is, you know, somewhere that you can send this message, I think it's also helpful right now. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think I'm simply going to ask each panelist for a concluding remark, because we have already reached the end of our 1 hour discussion today. And maybe I would like to phrase it, you know, what are your expectations maybe for the next Ukraine Recovery Conference next year in 2023. So what would be your expectations? What should have been evolved, established by now and decided by then in order to see progress and to actually bring us forward? Maybe I'm gonna simply go in reverse order. So first Natalia, then Gelind, and then Jean-Eric.
Thank you. I really appreciate this community of people who are contributing the ideas and a lot of work, and I would like to make a small call really to continue doing so, making these reports and giving back to the feedback to the ideas that Ukrainians are bringing to you. I think together we have much better chances to win and quicker. Thank you.
Thank you, Gelind.
Thank you. Well, actually, I hope that we will have structured the whole process a bit better to get more coherence between the European donors and the worldwide donors. I think this is crucial, and to identify projects which can be built in a realistic time frame. Thank you.
And Jean-Eric?
Yes. First, I really hope a victory of Ukraine at that time. I think that was the most important. And then, yes, I mean, we have to structure the way now we will support the infrastructure and the reconstruction of Ukraine. And I hope also, 1 year is a long time. I hope we have that time, we have convinced the private sector to come back to Ukraine and to develop in Ukraine.
Well, thank you very much for this. Well, first of all, to our panelists and also to our audience for this interesting discussion on, well, the first thoughts and the needs on the recovery of Ukraine. I think we really identified what are the basic and fundament, or the fundament that this recovery plan needs to build on, which is clearly values. We have also identified the needs that are immediately now to be funded, and in order to actually bring the Ukraine through the winter. And then we also looked a bit into the future in terms of midterm perspectives and how to organize this recovery and the support for the recovery, which I think there's still some open questions, some valid open and crucial open questions, but I'm also very pleased to see that there are several studies that have also been shared by here in the chat with us. There are additional other studies out there, and I think there are more to come, and it's important to engage in such discussions. So thank you again. Maybe please allow me to point out our next lunch debate, which will actually be an on-site event here in Berlin on the 24th of November. And the topic will be the global gateway, and also a very crucial issue. So if you're interested, watch out for our invitation, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you, or some of you, in our next discussion. And now I just wish you a very nice afternoon, and thank you all for having attended.
Hi, thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.